Let's talk about the Illinois state budget and where we're at in the process. As lawmakers on Friday left for the weekend before leaving town, they did not reveal a budget. So taxpayers still don't know how much money they're going to be spending or what they're going to be spending it on. The budget year starts July 1st. So just some of the protocol. The Illinois Constitution says any measure passed after May 31st with an effective date of immediate must get a supermajority out of both chambers for it to be enacted. That includes a budget. And with the budget year starting July 1st, the clock's ticking. Now, typically in years past, of course, COVID disrupted a bunch of that, and the budget impasse during the Rauner administration interrupted a bunch of this. But typically, the legislators schedule themselves in through May 31st, and they adjourn on May 31st. So they can, take all the last-minute steps that they need to take to pass legislation, including a budget. Last year, they got out at mid-April. It was a primary year, so they wanted to get back in their districts and prepare for that year's primary election. This year, they had scheduled to adjourn Friday, May 19th. Well, that date came and went. Despite assurances from legislative leaders they would be done May 19th, they did not finish the budget process. This after the governor proposed a budget in February of nearly $50 billion, and then we had April revenue estimates come in, which typically every year is a windfall. That did not produce, and you have a revenue number for the month of April alone that was $1.8 billion less than the April of 2022. So the revenue crunch is real, and they're anticipating, all of the other pressures there are on the budget, including pensions. And that's going to cost about $1 out of every $5 of state tax dollars that you pay going to pensions. They're looking at possibly spending $10 billion on pensions. So that's one big pressure. But there are other big pressures, including the proposals and ongoing Illinois policies of giving taxpayer subsidies to undocumented migrants for health care costs. So those are another big pressures, and that's estimated to cost more than $1 billion in the coming fiscal year, just with Illinois' policy of funding health care for undocumented migrants over the age of 42. Some want to drop that age down to 19. So we'll touch on some of that, but also hear from the Republicans who have been critical of this process here with WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. So let's get right into it. Governor J.B. Pritzker last month, he was asked about the revenue decrease and what that's going to mean for the budgeting process. Here's the governor at a stop here in Springfield last month talking about what his administration is doing in anticipation of that revenue decline.
I think the good news is, as you know, that the amount that we're talking about is a very small percentage of the entire overall budget. We're talking about possibly 1% of the entire budget. So we've, knowing that this might be coming, we've ramped down some of the spending here and there within all of our agencies to make sure that we could cover that 1% difference.
So the governor acknowledging that they're going to have to tighten their belt and limit how much the agencies spend on all of the different priorities that they have laid out. Well, one of the priorities, as we mentioned, the taxpayer subsidies for undocumented migrants. And this, again, is something that's estimated to cost more than $1 billion in the forthcoming budget that starts July 1st. Illinois has a policy in place right now that allows for taxpayer subsidies without any matching federal dollars. And I think this is important to note, because typically, taxpayer subsidized health care for citizens, you get matching federal dollars. It's like dollar for dollar. So if the state spends $4 billion for, say, a taxpayer subsidized health care benefit, they get a $4 billion match from the federal government. Well, when it comes to funding health care for undocumented migrants, those matching federal dollars are not there because, you can't do that under federal law. So you could do it with state tax dollars, but not federal tax dollars. A couple of weeks ago, a group of people pushing for more taxpayer subsidies for undocumented migrants held a news conference, and one of the state representatives, Teresa Ma out of Chicago, was there. And she talked about the policy that they want to enact to lower the age down to 19, which could increase how much taxpayer subsidies go to undocumented migrant health care.
Immigrants are part of our community, and we need to ensure that everyone has access to health care, especially preventative care, so that the costs down the road do not expand and become prohibitive. So, for the members of my community that would truly benefit from this expansion and who have benefited from the expansion of 42 and above, I think it's really important to maintain the healthcare services that we have made available, but also strongly consider and include in the budget as much as we can to expand healthcare access to as many people as possible.
So again, looking to expand that coverage to, quote, as many people as possible as part of the budget. Governor J.B. Pritzker at that same event from earlier, he was asked about this, the estimated $1.1 billion costs with Illinois' policy as is, and what kinds of suggestions he's giving to lawmakers to deal with that estimated cost. Here's the governor responding to that question of what kinds of things could the legislature do to shore up costs for undocumented migrant health care?
Well, as you know, it's a program that's different than Medicaid and different than regular private insurance. It is possible, for example, that there could be, for some people at certain income levels, copays. That's an example of something that would defray the cost of the program. That's one example. Another is, a question about reimbursement rates and what level the reimbursement rates would be for whatever services are given to people. So those are two among many, but really we gave them many options to choose from and ideas that they could take back to their caucuses and talk about, and we've tried to answer every question that's been brought to us. But these are all things that I think are reasonable to consider to make sure that we're reining in the cost, but also serving the people who most need this health care.
So Governor J.B. Pritzker giving some suggestions there on how to deal with the growing cost of migrant health care. Will those suggestions be worked into the budget? That's still a question that has yet to be seen. But one thing's for sure is that the state's budget has ballooned considerably just even over 10 years. 2014, the amount of revenue coming into the state was $37 billion. So 10 years ago, $37 billion. And the governor's proposed a $50 billion budget for this year. This is a point that State Representative Jeff Kiker laid out when he addressed members of the media late last week about the inflation of Illinois spending.
So let's frame this a little bit, too. As we look at when I came in 5 springs ago, we were dealing with an approximately $40 billion budget. And today we're looking at a $50 billion budget. Our budget has increased 25% in 5 years. We have folks calling each of our district offices with priorities on current programs that have been in place for a long time, such as adults with disabilities, such as long-term care facilities, such as reducing the PUNS list. And we continue to create new cost-consequential areas to spend resources. We have the money. Right, we're suggesting stay within the bounds of what we've got last year. We've got 25% more than we did 5 short years ago. Why do we need to continue to expand when we aren't taking care of the commitments that we have already put into place?
So again, Kiker saying that, hey, we keep inflating our budgets because we're getting more revenue. Why not keep the budget the same as it was previously and just use those revenues, to fund other much-needed programs? Something else, too, that could be part of the new budget is a Chicago city-wide effort to deliver peacekeepers to the streets to combat violence. The governor announcing this yesterday that a citywide crisis prevention and response unit's being created with peacekeepers peacekeepers that are going to be taking to the streets to try to prevent emergence of violence altogether by the ensuring that the pressures of trusted and recognizable community members in locations where violence might emerge, even when residents are outside of their home communities or attending large events. So the CPRU group, it's going to cost this fiscal year $700,000, but what is that going to cost for the next fiscal year that begins July 1st? Again, a big looming question that has yet to be answered, and taxpayers continue to maintain a kind of a holding pattern as to what they're going to see emerge in the budget process. But the whole thing has upsetted State Representative Stephen Reich, who had this to say on the House floor late Friday.
You know, if the state of Illinois was a $50 billion publicly traded company, the SEC would be in here like you wouldn't believe, and the management of this company would be going to jail. I can't believe that we're sitting here on the day we're supposed to adjourn. We don't have a budget. We don't even have a breath of a budget. Back in the Browner years, it was asked, where's your budget? Oh, maybe the dog ate the budget. I don't even think we have a budget that a dog on that side of the aisle could eat, because I don't think you're that close. I have never seen such rank incompetence in an administration as I have seen in the last 4 weeks. A $50 billion state that can't even put together a budget on its own timeline. I can't understand why it is that we have the management that we have. We need new management in this state. Everything about this thing just is absolutely disgusts me. It's May 19th. It was your date for us to adjourn. We're going to be back here next week. We'll probably be here until 3 o'clock on some morning just in order to pass a budget, because that's the tradition. The tradition is dropping it at 3 in the morning so nobody sees what we do under the cover of darkness. I'm ashamed of every single solitary one of us over here. I'm ashamed of our inability to be able to move this process along, and I'm doubly ashamed of those of you on that side of the aisle who thinks this is funny.
So a lot of passion there. Will we see the budget today? Will it be tomorrow? The lawmakers back today, tomorrow, and the House is in on Friday before the weekend, the holiday weekend. We'll see.